How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here and welcome back to another video. And yes, we can finally talk about HTC smartphones. I feel like I would have never said that 2 or 3 years ago, but HTC is finally making a comeback in the most controversial year yet. And it's not just one smartphone, but two different smartphones. So we've got the HTC Desire X Pro as well as the HTC U20 5G. Both sort of meet different expectations at different price points, and we're gonna get to both in just a bit. So the first one is the HTC Desire X Pro, and this is more of a trailer video of the smartphone, and from the looks of it, it's focusing more on giving users everything more than giving users the best of anything, if you ask me. So it's got a 6.5-inch LCD display, Full HD Plus on the front, no AMOLED panel, so it's not going to be rich, it's not going to be vibrant, but that means you're going to get a hardware fingerprint scanner on the back of the phone. Now, if you look at the back of the phone, it reminds me of Realme phones from this day and age, so it's nothing very inspired. And as far as the camera setup goes, it's a quad camera setup. So if we look at the overall specifications of the phone, 6.5-inch screen, as I mentioned, a 19.5:9 aspect ratio, a 5000 mAh battery, which is a big deal because with a 5000 mAh battery, this thing is going to last easily between 1.5 to even 2 days on constant strong to heavy usage. So that's something I can vouch for even without using the phone. Now, in terms of camera, we're looking at a 48 megapixel primary sensor, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel depth, and a 2 megapixel macro sensor. So all of these cameras in tandem are going to work together to, make the most out of this camera unit. I'm not expecting anything revolutionary, but it's definitely something to keep in mind because I feel like these are some of the first smartphones from HTC that will really benefit from computational photography. They might have some software processing in there to improve images. That's something we should keep in mind, but that I cannot comment on until I actually get my hands on the phone. As far as the front-facing camera goes, it's a 25 megapixel selfie camera, but I feel like with this camera setup, the Desire X Pro is aiming a lot to be a camera-centric phone. It's got 4K video support, so that's something you should keep in mind. It's also saying that the front lens can produce some amazing selfies, 4K photography as I mentioned, so all of that is great, and it's really focusing on the night shot and the bokeh effects that the camera can produce. So it's pretty camera driven if you ask me, the super macro mode as well, and this is something that bears a lot of weight because the Desire series in general is one that had a lot of hype associated with it when it was the popular phone back in the day, and now that it's carrying this moniker and it's also promoting the camera, it's something that you should keep in mind, and it's definitely something that I'll test out when and if I do get my hands on this phone. It's also got NFC support, which is great to see with the economy driving towards a contactless sort of economy, and it's got a Qualcomm Snapdragon 665 mobile processor. So this, I think, is one of the drawbacks of the phone because I feel like the 665 is a year-old processor. It's not going to bring you the best value for money, but maybe with the Android 10 UI and Sense UI on top of that, it's going to bring some sort of benefits. I don't really know how it's going to perform. I feel like it's going to perform mediocre at best, and that's something that people might be disappointed by. 128 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigabytes of memory to top it off. Apart from that, these are the detailed specifications. I think the one thing I want to mention is that it does have a 3.5mm headphone jack for anyone who still uses it. But of course, that 5000 mAh battery does have a sacrifice, and that's the thickness of the phone at 9.4mm thick. But that's pretty much the Desire X Pro. It's going to sell at 8,990 NT dollars, which translates to around 303 US dollars and around 1,100 to 1,200 UAE dirhams. So at this price point and the specifications you're getting, it's a bit overpriced in my opinion, and there's nothing really too pro about the phone. So maybe HTC is missing the point with these phones because they're just clones of Realme phones and Xiaomi phones, and I feel like Realme and Xiaomi truly deliver good value for money, especially some of their smartphones. And if this was going to be an international phone, it would definitely not be successful. At least that's from the opinion, and that's from the initial impressions I'm getting from all of these specifications and the value for money that you can get for this price tag, and even less. The one phone that comes to mind is always the Realme 6 series. That thing has a 90Hz display. It's got still an LCD display, but it's got a decent camera setup, a good processor, and it sells for around the 699 dirham price tag. So this phone is almost double the price, but it might be bringing more to the table when it comes to camera and maybe NFC support. But let's put that to the side and talk about the other phone that HTC released, which is the HTC U20 5G. So this is a big deal for HTC because this is the first ever 5G phone from the company, and oddly enough, the bezels on this phone are actually thicker than the ones on the Desire 20 Pro, so that's something you should keep in mind. The design looks fairly similar. It's got a 6.8-inch display on the front. It's still an LCD display, it's not an AMOLED one. The camera setup is also pretty similar, the fingerprint scanner on the back. So in terms of design aesthetic, it is pretty similar to what we see on the Desire 20 Pro, but this thing brings support for 5G and a newer processor. So arguably this might be the phone to get if you want it, you know, in an international market segment. So the U20 5G, again, it's a 9.4mm thick phone and it's heavier at 215 grams. So I don't know how comfortable this is going to be in the hand. It's not got a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is a bit surprising, but the front-facing camera is a bit upgraded with a 32-megapixel front-facing camera, still Full HD plus video, so no support for 4K video on the front-facing camera, but the main camera sees the same sort of setup. It's a 48, 8, 2 and 2 megapixel setup. So I don't really know if the camera on this thing is any different from the camera found on the Desire 20 Pro. I feel like it's not going to be that different, and the price hike is due to the processor found on the phone, which is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 765 5G processor, one of the most popular processors out there in terms of gaming performance, in terms of value for money, and it's got it all in a 6.8-inch body with a 20:9 aspect ratio. So slightly different aspect ratio as well, but the same 5000 milliamp hour battery. So that's it for this one. This one supports Quick Charge 4.0, so up to 18 watt fast charging. The other one only supported Quick Charge 3.0. I think in real world usage, it's going to be about 10 to 15 minutes difference when charging, so not that much. But I think both smartphones support dual SIM support. If we go over to the Desire 20 Pro tab, yes, they both have a dual SIM slot, which is great to see. But I feel like this is the more flagship level smartphone which will bring performance, and if you really want to buy an HTC smartphone for whatever reason, you might as well go for this one and not the Desire 20 Pro. And even though this thing doesn't have a Pro associated with the name, I feel like this is more Pro than the Desire 20 Pro. This thing sells for 18,990 NT dollars, which translates to $640. Once again, the value for money that you're getting with this phone is nowhere near the other phones that we're starting to see in terms of even the likes of the OnePlus 8, for example, the LG Velvet series. All these smartphones fall in similar price brackets, and for HTC to price this phone at such a high price tag is a bit odd. Now, once again, these are only phones coming in Taiwan, and maybe this price tag in Taiwan might be competitive, but we don't know how competitive, or we know how competitive it is in the international market. And if HTC plans to bring it to the international market, they need to really buck up, because if they price it at that price point, no one's going to buy it. But aside from that, I feel like if they released a phone like this one, maybe the HTC M20 Pro 5G or something like that, with a similar camera setup like this, maybe a triple camera setup like we see on the OnePlus 8, for example, or the Oppo Find X2 Pro, for example, if they had a unibody construction, maybe a faster charging speed, so maybe charging up to 40 watts without wireless charging with a metallic body, compact design, maybe the highest end processing power, 2K display, 90 Hz. I think that's more of a dream phone that we're describing here. And something that's disappointing with this new series, also the fact that there's no mention of any type of speakers. They're not powered by, you know, Beats Audio. They're not powered by any sort of extra speaker configuration. So that's something that's a bit disappointing. If I've missed that, I might have, but as far as I can see, there's no sort of boom sound effect, and that's something that I'll miss if they're ditching that. But yeah, I mean, these are pretty uninspired phones if you ask me, but they're phones nonetheless. They're a step in the right direction, and maybe HTC has something in the works. I feel like the pricing still needs a lot of work if they want to be internationally competitive. But if they want to, you know, release these phones as Taiwan exclusives, gauge, they do have theater level audio. So this one has theater level audio. Nothing on what sort of tuning this has, but it does have theater level audio. I missed that, so that's my bad. You can probably learn more of that if you go on their website. But yeah, those were my initial thoughts. I feel like for the specifications and for the price tag, you're not getting much. And the Desire 20 Pro is just a Pro by its name. There's nothing Pro in terms of the specifications that you're getting from it. But I am really excited for the phones. I'm really excited to see how they do in Taiwan, and maybe HTC might come up with a flagship smartphone by the end of this year. Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 Plus, 8GB of RAM, 128GB of storage, unibody construction, 2K 90Hz panel, and yeah, really fast Sense UI. So let me know what you guys think about my impressions down in the comments. Thanks for watching this one. Are you gonna buy the phone? Let me know that in the comments too. So this was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.